Hello everyone and welcome to English for You. I'm Mike.
I'm Shikling.
And today and tomorrow we're going to be talking about how to improve your writing with show, don't tell. Yeah, I know you're a big writer. You write all the time. You've written books and novels.
Me?
Television shows, movie scripts.
I only write songs.
You write songs. There you go. Well, okay, maybe you can translate this great advice into writing even better songs. Because what this article is all about is how to write characters that kind of attract the reader and draw them in. Characters that seem believable. So the main tip here is write when you're describing someone, write about what they're doing or how they look rather than telling us their feelings. That's kind of the idea. So it's a very good tip. It's useful in all kinds of writing, but of course, mainly in writing fiction, in writing prose or something like that. Maybe not so useful for writing your history paper at school, but certainly very good for your creative writing and also any type of other sort of fictional writing you might choose to do. So let's find out all about making your writing even better by showing, not telling.
Reading. Improve your writing with show, don't tell. Look at these two sentences. Susan was really angry today. Susan ran into her room, slamming the door behind her. Her hands were two tight fists. Both sentences convey the same information. But which one does it in a more interesting way? It's the second one, and it's doing so because it's following an important writing principle. Show, don't tell. Good writers show things to their readers through characters' actions, words, and thoughts. They describe things instead of simply stating them. For example, writing, "It was a hot summer day," is telling. However, writing, "Joey sweated as he plodded through the summer heat," is showing. Writers do this because it engages readers by letting them experience the same things as the characters. This helps readers feel like they're in the story, not just finding out what happens in it. What's more, show, don't tell makes characters seem more real. We can see who they are from their words and actions. So, how can we do more showing and less telling?
All right, so to give an idea of what we're talking about here, about showing and not telling when you're writing and writing in a descriptive way, we're going to give you some examples. This is going to be great because it's going to be so easy to understand the main point without me just yakking and talking about it. Let's read about it and get a really good example. So it says, look at these two sentences. Well, don't just look at them, please read them as well. Because we want you to read the sentences and not just stare at the words on a page. So let's read these sentences. You want to read the first one?
Susan was really angry today.
Okay, so that tells us how Susan was feeling today, right?
That's how I talk all the time.
Susan was really angry today? You say that a lot?
No. I simply just say how I feel.
Well, sure, because you're not trying to impress people with your wonderful writing.
Yeah.
You're just trying to communicate the basic important information, which is fine. As I said, if you're writing a history paper, if you're writing a news story, then yes, you might say the president was angry today, right? That gives the basic information, but that's all it gives, right? We're telling you how Susan feels. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to picture it or imagine it in your own mind. It doesn't sort of connect in a personal way with how you feel on a day when you are angry. But you're right, it gives the basic information. But how about these two sentences for the same idea? Susan ran into her room, slamming the door behind her. Her hands were two tight fists.
Okay.
I can feel her frustration and anger, right? So we're told there what she did. We're not told how she's feeling. We're just sort of watching her. She comes into the room. She slams the door, of course, closes the door with a lot of violent action. It makes a bang, a big loud sound. We can see her hands are two tight fists like this. It gives you a much greater impression of her anger and her feelings at this time than just being told she's upset, she's angry. Two tight fists. Yeah, when we use this word tight, something tight, it means it's very strong and there's probably a lot of pressure coming from the outside. If a young kid is scared, they might hold on to their parent's hand with a very tight grip or something like that. Or if you're hanging on something, if you're pulling yourself up on that thing at the gym, you want your hands to be nice and tight because that will give you the strength to hold on. For example, just before she got on the train, Sarah turned and gave both her parents a tight hug. Not one of those, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, let's hug. No, oh, I'm holding on to you because I really don't want to leave and I'll miss you so much. So it's showing your emotions because you're using your power to hold on very tightly.
所以 slam 就是去使劲的关上，或者是把什么砰一声的关上。那么 tight 老师刚刚讲很清楚，就是有紧紧的，可能是抓，可能是握，甚至是拥抱都 OK。那么口语上呢，我们通常说很忙或时程很紧凑，我们也可以说 I've got a tight schedule，我很忙哦。那其实还有一个讲法，通常比较负面一点，代表一个人用钱不太大方，我们就可以说一个人是 tight-fisted。比如说 Don't imagine Terry will buy you a drink. He's too tight-fisted.
Well, he holds on to his money really tightly. In other words, he's kind of cheap. Anyways, let's talk about that word fist. So in our sentence, that girl had two tight fists, showing how angry she was. This other guy, he won't buy you a drink because he's tight-fisted. So your fist is basically the shape that you make when you close your hand and wrap your thumb around the rest of your fingers, right? We have these 4 fingers, a thumb. If I do that, I am now making a fist. We often think of boxers. Of course, they use their fists when they're punching things. In the days of COVID, people have started doing a fist bump instead of shaking hands, right? Because you might think that it's a little cleaner and safer. And of course, you can use your fist when you're using your hand to hit on things or something like that. But that is basically a balled up hand, your hand that looks like it's in the shape of a ball. We call that shape and that part of this hand held in this way a fist. For example, Albert used his fist to pound on the door as he yelled, "Open up!" because he's trying to make as much noise as possible. So his fist will give him maximum power.
Fist 就是有拳头的意思，所以其实握紧拳头的动词我们可以说 clench。所以比如说 he clenched his fists in frustration。所以文章其实就是2个句子，我们可以说 Susan 今天很生气。或者是 Susan 跑进她的房间，甩上身后的门，她的手是2个紧紧的拳头，是不是觉得画面感更多了？
Right, so as you just explained, both of those sentences convey the same information. But which one does it in a more interesting way? Ah, very good point. So yes, both sentences convey the same information. Susan is angry. Susan is upset. Yeah, we get that information from both of those sentences. They both convey the same idea.
Right. 所以 convey 就是表达或者是传达，代表你的思想、感情、想法都 OK。2句意思差不多，哪一句比较有趣呢？
Yeah, convey is kind of like to bring from one place to another. So a bus might convey you from the airport to your hotel, but by talking and communicating, you are conveying information. You're bringing it or sending it from one place to another. So yeah, we get both the same information about Susan and how she's feeling from both of those sentences. Sure. But as the article goes on to say, it's the second one, and it's doing so because it's following an important writing principle. Show, don't tell. So the second sentence is conveying the information in a much more interesting kind of way because the second sentence is showing us her feelings. It's not telling us her feelings. It's a good point. We know she came in, she slammed the door, she's got hands in 2 tight fists, but nowhere in there do they use a word angry, upset, sad, unhappy. There's nothing in there that talks about her feelings, but we know her feelings by having them shown to us and not just told to us. True. All right, let's talk about this principle. A principle is basically a fundamental law or a truth, okay? Something that is a principle has probably been decided as being true and important and correct for a very long time. All people accept it. When we think about things that are right and wrong, these are principles. It's not good to steal. It's not good to lie. You might not get in trouble with the police if you lie to your friends, but we all agree it's a principle that you just don't break that rule. You don't lie to your friends. Even if you might not be in trouble, it will still be considered wrong or bad. You will be kind of breaking a basic rule that we all understand. So these principles are important things that everyone probably agrees on. For example, it's a basic principle that the more you practice, the better you will perform. I don't think many people will argue with that. No. If you want to get really good, don't do that activity and you'll just magically become good. That's not a principle. The principle is the more you practice, the better you will be. We all agree on that.
所以这是有原则 principle 原则跟原理的意思。那还有一个行为准则或原则的感觉。比如说一个人是很有原则或准则的人，你就可以说 Robin is a man of principle.
Okay.
这代表他是一个很有准则人。那第二句的话，因为他有遵守一个 show don't tell 的写作原则，所以他会比较有趣。
All right, back to the article. It says good writers show things to their readers through characters' actions, words, and thoughts. So we get the character in the story to kind of show us how they're feeling by what they're doing, not just by telling us how they feel. We can get the information, but it's not very interesting when we're just told the information.
所以优秀的作家呢，通常就是透过人物的行为、言语跟思想去跟读者展示他们的想法跟事物。
All right, so if you're writing in a very creative way and in a very attractive way for the reader, it says they, that's the writers, they describe things instead of simply stating them, right? So they're basically painting you a picture of it, not telling you what's in the picture. You can see the picture, you can figure it out for yourself. So they're not stating it that carefully or that clearly. They're letting you figure it out on your own. So when you state something, you basically say something and you're very careful about what you are saying, all right? You don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to be misunderstood. And this is something that you're probably saying and you want people to pay attention to it. It's important. It's something that you really want to be sure you are communicating as clearly as possible because you're trying to avoid a misunderstanding. Here's a good example of a time when you might be stating things very carefully. Alexandra stated to the police that she was traveling in another country at the time of the murder. She probably promised to tell the truth. There might have been a lawyer there. She's making a statement, which is an important message or an important bit of communication. So she is stating to the police, this is the truth. It wasn't me. She's not just like, I didn't do it. She's stating it very confidently, and she has proof.
那我们来看一下 state 这个单字哦。State 有陈述或者是说明的意思，那这边是动词，我们当名词也可以，名词可以指有状态，或甚至是有一些国家，美国、德国、澳洲等等，我们会讲他们的州，他们国家里面的邦，也是可以当 state。那我们看一个句子。Everything was in a state of disorder. 一切都是处于混乱状态。所以呢，我们刚刚有说到，好的作家其实他们是描述事物，而不是简单的陈述他们而已。
All right, so here's another example to kind of get the idea. It's not just when we want to describe people and how they're feeling, we can also describe other things, including nature. For example, we read, writing, it was a hot summer day. That's telling. It's telling us what it was like outside. It's as interesting as reading a weather report. Reading a weather report is great if you want to know the temperature and if you need an umbrella, but it won't kind of describe the heat that the people were feeling when they went out on that day. You need to show that in a more interesting way.
所以举例来说，直接写那一天是夏天里很热的一天，这个只是单纯说出来。How can we make it better?
Well, how about this? However, writing, Joey sweated as he plodded through the summer heat. Now that is showing.
Oh.
All right, so we get this idea of Joey. He's plodding. That's kind of walking with heavy, tired steps as he sweated through. We can imagine the water pouring down his face. The summer heat. So there we get the idea of his body temperature is very high, his energy level is very low, he's plodding every time he lifts his feet. It really is hard work, and the summer heat gives you the idea. You can almost see those heat rays coming off the sun, right? Coming down onto Todd as he's walking through this terrible weather. So there you go. We're showing us about it. There's nothing in there that describes the temperature. It doesn't say it was 43 degrees in August or something. No, we describe how he's feeling, and now we understand exactly what the weather is like.
那我们这边有出现 for example, however 的用法，这些都是很常见的转承词。那我们在讲解这一句之前呢，我们先来看一下转承词的用法。好，我们来看一下转承词。某些词语呢，它在语义上呢可以连接上下句，那它就可以带出因果啊、转折或者是补充等等等。那这些词呢，我们叫做转承词。那我们写作的时候，通常加入它们，可以让句子更加的顺畅。那我们看一下，如果是表达因果原因或结果的，我们有像是 therefore 因此，或者是结果 as a result 或因此 so。In order to 为了干嘛，或 so that 为了以便怎么样？我们看一个句子 ，Teamwork is required in order to achieve these aims。为了实现这一些目标呢，我们是需要团队的合作。那如果今天是转折或者是比较，就像我们刚刚讲到的 ，however 就是有然而，或 on the contrary 有相反地，或 on the other hand 另一方面，这些都可以。比如说 ，It wasn't a good thing. On the contrary, it was a huge mistake. 这不是一件好事，相反的是一个非常巨大的错误。那如果是补充说明呢，有像是 in addition to 或 in addition 除此之外 ，or for example 我们刚刚讲的举例来说，或者是一方面怎么样，另一方面 for one thing, for another thing 或 for another 就好了，或者是 what's more 有再者的意思。比如说 in addition to his weekly wage, he got a lot of tips. 除了每一周的工资以外呢，他还有得到很多的小费。
All right, and so one of the things in that sentence that of course jumps out and really tells us how Todd is feeling is when it talked about the sweat running down his face. He was sweating a lot. When you sweat, your body is producing liquid through your skin in order to cool you off. Right? Your body's got to stay at a certain temperature. If you're exercising, if you're out on a hot day, or even worse, if you're out exercising on a hot day, you will probably sweat a lot as your body releases this water to cool down your skin and to lower your body temperature to a safe level. If someone's sweating, they're probably working hard, and it might even be very warm outside. For example, by the time David got home from jogging, he was sweating quite a lot. Well, he's jogging in July in the middle of the day. That's not even safe to do. You might not sweat enough to keep yourself healthy.
所以 sweat 就是流汗，所以通常大汗淋漓，英文可以说的 pour with sweat。就说 Where have you been? Why are you pouring with sweat?
I was in a sauna.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why. Another reason you might be sweating and you're in a sauna. The other good thing about, of course, sweat is we also call that water sweat. Right? So it's both a verb, I am sweating, and gosh, I have a lot of sweat on me, I need to go take a shower or something. Yeah.
所以可以当名词哦。那么 plod 这个字就是沉重、缓慢的走的意思。所以呢，如果我们那个夏天很热，我们把它写成 Joey 在炎热的夏天拖着沉重的步伐，汗流浃背，有没有觉得 so much better?
Definitely. All right, back to the article. Now, writers, it says, writers do this because it engages readers by letting them experience the same things as the characters. Yeah, it's just a lot more interesting. It will definitely engage the reader a lot more than if we're just told how someone feels. If we have to imagine how they feel, or if the writer can sort of bring us in our mind to a situation where we felt the same thing, then we feel what the character is feeling, at least in our imagination, and that personal connection will engage the reader a lot more. To engage someone is basically to kind of get their attention, get their interest, and to hold on to it. If someone is in the store and they're trying to sell things, excuse me, sir, would you have 5 minutes to hear about my new product? Now, if you walk over and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, tell me about your new product, then they are engaging you. They're talking to you, they're communicating with you, and you are paying attention to what they want you to be looking at. If you just go, oh, sorry, I don't have time, and you walk off, then they have not engaged you. You are not now joining together with them to talk and to listen and to have an experience. For example, teachers must always find ways to engage their students and maintain their interest. Teachers want you to pay attention, be interested, and listen to what they're talking about. And so stop looking at your phone. Don't engage with your phone. Engage with the people around you, please.
所以 engage 就是吸引谁的注意力或兴趣。那我们也是有一个片语叫 be engaged in， 它就是有从事什么，比如说 they are engaged in import and export， 他们从事进出口业务。那么作家这么做是因为他可以通过让读者去体验跟角色相同的事物来吸引读者的，去吸引读者就对了。
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Back to the article. This, engaging with the writer and especially with the character in the story, it says this helps readers feel like they're in the story, not just finding out what happens in it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the difference between a newspaper story that describes what happened in a certain place and then reading about it or even watching it in a movie with the characters who are there and you feel their emotions and you, even if you've never traveled to that country, you can have some idea of what they're feeling rather than just being told the simple basic facts.
所以呢，这个 show don't tell 这种用法其实可以有助于读者在感觉他们是在故事里面，而不是只是知道哦发生什么事情了。
Back to the article. What's more, show, don't tell makes characters seem more real. Yeah, absolutely. We're getting inside their heads, inside how they're feeling. And of course, that makes the characters seem much more real to us.
真的哦，而且你看，又是另外一个转层词了。除此之外呢 ，show don't tell 这种写作技巧可以让角色更加的生动，更加的写实。
And the article then says, we can see who they are from their words and actions. We can also feel who they are a little bit more from their words and actions.
Yeah, 真的是这样子。所以好好的使用它，我们还可以从角色的言行举止去看出他们本来的个性。
All right, so here's a question as we wrap up for today. So how can we do more showing and less telling? Now we're kind of moving into the advice part of this article, giving you guys advice in your own writing about how to do more showing, less telling. In other words, how to get people to feel the characters' feelings rather than just be told what the characters are feeling. It's a good question.
所以要如何使用这种写作准则呢？我们就在明天的文章中跟大家分享。那 before we do that,
yes, we'll be doing that tomorrow with a few answers to that difficult and challenging question and how to be a better writer. But before we do that, we do have a chat question, so let's check that out.
For you chat.
All right, so our chat question is about books and, specifically the kinds of books you or we or people might be interested in reading. So our question is, what do you look for the most in a book? Is it the story, the characters, the writing style, or something else?
I usually look, I care about the story the most.
The story the most?
Okay. Because, I write songs, so
yes.
I like to hear about different stories, so it gives me inspiration.
Okay, all right. And are there certain types of stories that you like more than others? Or are there certain types of stories you're like, oh, I don't like that kind of story? Or you'll try anything?
I'm not really a big fan of love stories,
okay.
But I have to hear about them.
Okay.
I have to because, I have to write songs to sell my songs, so sometimes I have to... I have to go with the market.
Absolutely, and you need to be able to describe different types of characters and different types of situations. That's a good answer. What do I look for? I look for, a good story, definitely. Good characters. I want to read something interesting. I read a lot of nonfiction, like history or something. But even there, I find it more interesting if I get the people's, what they were thinking and feeling at the time, rather than just, and then this guy did this and he did that. When you get that personal side, when you get to kind of feel what the person in the book or the person in that historical moment, if you get to feel what they were feeling, it obviously brings so much more to life. So what about you guys? What do you look for most in a book? Story, characters, writing style, or something else? Have a chat about that, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for more Show, Don't Tell. Vocabulary Review.
Tight. Michael held the bottle in a tight hold with one hand and turned its lid with his other. Fist. Dan made a fist as if he wanted to punch me. Principal. At our school, all students are expected to follow the principle of having respect for others. State. Yesterday, Margaret stated that she was late because of the traffic, but I know that the traffic was fine. Sweat. Even with a fan blowing on me, I sometimes sweat during the hot summer. Engage. The bright colors and funny sounds in children's TV shows are meant to engage kids.
智慧小补帖
Slam. Convey. Plod.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net